Good morning. When Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon Peter and Andrew, two brothers. Both brothers were placing their nets into the water, for they were fishermen. And Jesus said to the brothers, "Come follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." Now, here is what blows my mind. Jesus called them. Jesus called Peter, Andrew, James, and John to be his disciples. And they left their nets, they left behind their family business, fishing business to follow Jesus. Now, how many of you would leave your good jobs to follow Jesus? How many of you would leave the things that you've been doing your whole life to follow Jesus? How many of you will leave the things that you desire the most to follow Jesus? And how many are you ready to turn your lives over to God and discover He can make a lot more out of your lives than you ever can? I don't want to be long-winded in this message this morning, but I was analyzing the scriptures, Matthew chapter 4, verses 18 through 22, and I realized when I read this, Jesus said something so simple. He said something so clear-cut, something that was so uncomplicated and so plain. Jesus said, "Come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." So I'm asking myself this morning, where in this statement did Jesus put up any force? Where in this statement does Jesus put up a fuss? Where in this statement is the malicious intent? Jesus didn't say to them, "Leave your nets." Jesus did not say, "Stop fishing." Jesus did not say, "Change before you can follow me." Jesus did not allow their imperfections, their personal inadequacies, their faults, their shortcomings get in the way of his calling for them. There were no conditions that they had to meet. There were no strings attached. They could have been living a full rebellion against God, and God still would have called them. And Luke chapter 5, verses 2 through 11 offers more details about Jesus calling Peter, James, and John that are not in Matthew for those Bible scholars who wants to poke a hole in this message. But I just want to put emphasis, and I want to highlight the part of "Come, follow me." In his statement that he made to them, it was an invitation, not an order. And I'm thinking his voice was so relaxed. His tone was soft. His presence was comforting. And I'm thinking his posture was like a strong message. I'm trying to pay attention to the scene here and study how Jesus saw them as they were. And he could use what they already possessed. Jesus had observed them for some time. Jesus saw their mistakes. He saw their flaws. He saw their errors. He saw their defects. And he saw their weaknesses. One would say, they're not perfect. They don't fit the bill. They don't add up to this godly description. They don't look like the promise of God. Now, people see who he has called, and they say the promises of God are in doubt. This can't be written. This don't look right. How can God's life perfect blueprint have imperfect people being the change agent in the world? But what I see in this scene is God doesn't need people to feel comfortable with his idea. Neither does he care about their interrogative questioning about his plan or their private debriefings of who he has called. So my next analysis would be, why did Jesus choose these fishermen anyway? What could they possibly possess that God could use from them? So let's go through what we already know. They are fishermen. Jesus he chose the unschooled, the unsophisticated men to be his change agents in the world. So Jesus called the unqualified rather than calling the qualified. Jesus called ordinary people like you and me, men and women, boys and girls, grandpa and grandmas, to be his disciples. So, wait a minute. You can be called a change agent for Christ. Wherever you live, wherever you work, wherever you travel, whatever your trade is, you could be a change agent for Christ. So Jesus did not only call Andrew and Peter, but he called James and John. Now, James and John, they were successful fishermen, as stated in Matthew chapter 4, verses 20 through 22. These men were a natural fit with Andrew and Peter. Now we have 4 fishermen. I'm curious and I'm intrigued, why fishermen? So I Googled fishermen. I Googled fishermen skills. I Googled their qualities, characteristics, their whole profile, because I wanted to know what it is about a fisherman that Jesus was so, intrigued about. Like, why did he choose fishermen? So the first thing I found under personality and interests are the listening skills. So according to Truity.com, it says fishers and related fishing workers need to work well with others. They take instructions from captains and others. So this would explain when Jesus called Simon and Andrew, at once they left their nets and followed him. At once was their immediate response, their immediate reaction to Jesus calling, their analytical skills, their physical strength, their physical stamina. Now, according to Truity.com, it says fishing workers must measure the quality of their catch, which requires precision and accuracy. Physical stamina says fishers must be able to work long hours, often in strenuous conditions. Physical strength of a fisherman says fishers must use physical strength with hand dexterity and coordination to perform difficult tasks repeatedly. So a fisherman or fisherman are dedicated people. They're committed people. They have a great deal of patience and dedication. Their dedication pushes the person to keep fishing. Fishermen are courageous people. They travel in deep, treacherous waters. So this was no accident for Jesus to call these fishermen. Jesus not only saw their weaknesses, but he saw their strengths, and he used those strengths to win people to Christ. Now, the passion and the zeal these men had for fishing, God used it to serve him and made them fishers of men. So their catch was much bigger than just fish. So our weaknesses and their weaknesses will play into the strengths. See, God wants us to focus on what we do well. See, the fishermen' weaknesses were hidden from the people's view. Their struggles, their flaws, and their insecurities, but God knew their weaknesses and he knew ours. See, weakness is an opportunity for God to work powerfully in our lives. And Psalm 73:26 says, he is the strength in our heart. And I often wonder, how does God work through my weakness, other people's weaknesses, for his glory? In order for Christ's power to work in us, we must be in submission to him, even when we are weak. When we are weak, we are allowing ourselves to humbly depend on God, who is able to align our will with his will. See, God gave the fishermen and he gave us an opportunity to participate in his divine plans to change the world. So, sisters and brothers, we cannot do anything in our strength. If we are liars, if we are cheaters, abusers, if we are gay, if we have addictions, whatever it may be, when we yield to Jesus Christ, we will experience his power at his work in us, transforming both our heart and his mind. See, you can be at rock bottom situation, in a rock bottom circumstance, and it seems like you can't go any further down, but there's an opportunity to look up. And we see Jesus in these times where we are at our weakest. And we try to cruise through life on our own, and we think we have it made, and our weaknesses and the trials we face can bring us to the realization of our need to depend on the Lord. We have to trust God in every circumstance, no matter how big it may be. So before I close out this message this morning, I could continue to really go on, but I'm going to finish this out. Something in us has to change when we come in contact with God, when we have an encounter with God. Something has to fall off to become a new creature. We cannot remain who we were before we met Christ. See, Christ, and to those folks who are trying to force change, we cannot force people to change. Only God can take care of all of that if the person chooses to put down their net and follow Christ. That is the message today, to leave your nets and follow Christ. But let God work on your heart. You cannot do it yourself. You cannot change before you decide you want to give your life over to Christ. Let God do that for you. Just place your net down and follow him. God bless you and have a wonderful day.